The millennials are just as impatient as North American millennials, and they're not happy with the customer experience in real estate sales. They want information. They want.
So here's the thing. Entrepreneurs, leaders, salespeople, we all want to create consistent, repeatable, and scalable ways to grow our business and our income. And we want to do it better, faster, and more seamlessly. Why? So we can actually enjoy our lives, take vacations, and spend the quality time that we want with the people that we love. How do we do all this without spending a fortune or running ourselves ragged? That's the big question, and this show is dedicated to the answer. Hey, welcome to today's show. Super excited to introduce you to a longtime friend and someone that is absolutely changing how real estate is done throughout all of Europe. Get ready. This guy's more intense than I am, and I can't wait to read your comments. Enjoy my podcast with Michael Polzler.
The real estate industry is full of some of the most remarkable, interesting, fascinating salespeople, entrepreneurs, franchisors, just crazy people. The guy I'm going to introduce you to right now, though, is arguably at the top of my list of influential, crazy, fun, fantastic people. He and his family and their partner, this incredible family partnership, have done something that very few have ever done. Not only have they crossed multiple generations with their partnership and this incredible family dynamic, they've also gone from just being a North American business to now, basically being one of the leading real estate companies throughout all of Europe. So I'm really excited to introduce you to a longtime friend, Michael Polzler. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Tom.
Yes, thank you, man. So Michael, I've got a bunch of questions that I want to get into, both for people that are maybe thinking about creating a franchise, for someone that's maybe thinking about starting their own business, for someone
Before we get to that,
yes.
We are by far the leading real estate organization in Europe.
I knew that, but I just didn't want to
say
so.
By far.
But by the way, if you can tell by his intensity, this is how he and I are all the time. Let's go. All right. So Michael, for the people that don't know you, or maybe you've not been exposed to the Remax Integra, the parent company, take us on a little journey from the backstory, because you and I have a lot in common in that we worked with our dads.
Yes.
So you went to university, you graduated with honors. How did you get started?
Okay. Well, let's go back to Polzler Real Estate. Before Remax, my father was a real estate broker. I come from a real estate family. My sister used to answer the phone at Polzler Real Estate while babysitting me, while my father was at the back making deals, making calls with the deal board up, the bullpen, the traditional Glengarry, Glen Ross look, and that's pretty much what life was like. Polzler Real Estate. My father was a real entrepreneur. He expanded. 6 or 7 offices, 160 sales associates, but it was always tough as an independent, competing against big banks, big competitors. And in the late 1970s, he heard about Remax, wanted to do it with a partner. He partnered up then with Walter Schneider. They've been 50-50 partners since 1980, the Schneider family, and us, the Polzler family. And in 1980, started this incredible Remax journey.
But you guys didn't come out of the gate the way most people would think about that. You guys didn't go out, at least my understanding is that you didn't buy a franchise, that Walter and Mr. P, right,
Mm-hmm.
your pops, came out of the gate and said, no, we want a master franchise rights.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. They decided that they would buy Ontario and Atlantic Canada, which is a total population of about 16 million people. Yeah. And they started selling franchises right away. That was job one. 2 Polzler real estate offices were converted to Remax, as kind of show offices. My father kind of ran them for a while. It was a very short order before my sister took over, straight out of university, running the brokerages, and my father and Walter were full-time franchisors from the real estate industry. So we understood real estate, like we all still do.
Cold calling, marketing, doing
Absolutely.
deals, hiring agents,
Yes.
firing agents.
Yes. Yes.
So which is fantastic. Especially like, a lot of people listening to Joe Michael aren't. Some are in real estate, some are in mortgage, some are insurance, some are, some are personal trainers at a fitness business. Some are just entrepreneurs. Some are high school and college kids, right? So I really want them to get like.
We're a prospecting
Yes.
family.
Yes.
You finish work once you've made X number of contacts and had X number of conversations. It's not about what time the clock says. You have to either be prospecting or presenting or signing a deal. That's what we do. That's
like basically
that's it.
breakfast, that, then dinner.
Yes, that's it.
So I think for people that are hearing that, so many people, I'm sure you dealt with it. I know I dealt with it early on, right? Being the son of, right? That it's just implied that these fathers of ours were wildly successful and therefore shoved a silver spoon down our throat and everything was easy. Like that was the case for you, right?
I started in garbage. And do you remember the old MLS books?
Yes.
When people were finished with the MLS books, this was in the 70s, before Remax, into the early days of Remax, they would throw them out the back door into the alley, and then it would rain on them, and then they would weigh a couple of 100 pounds, and guess who got to get rid of those MLS books on a regular basis? Yeah, that's kind of where I started in the business. You joked about school. You know full well school was not my strong suit. I decided to retire from school at 19 years old with almost having finished high school. And
You and I ran that same 5-year, 6-year program.
yeah, the
Yes.
6-year program. Exactly.
We thought maybe we'd just become teachers. We've been there so long.
Yes. And basically started at 19 years old, October 31st. 1986, driving my father around to appointments and listening to what he did. I'd been doing that for years before then, having been in the real estate office. So I knew all about the kind of, my father's been taking me into meetings since I was a child. I remember at like 12 years old, do you mind if my son joins us? And I'd sit there, and if I would get bored, he'd say, well, go out and walk around. And then I guess once I was 19, once I was full-time and I was employed, that I wasn't allowed to just leave the meeting. I actually had to stay in the meeting. Stay focused, exactly. And through that, it was all about prospecting. One of the first things my father handed me to start to the job was, here's a MLS book with all of the names of all of the real estate people in such and such an area with their home telephone numbers on it.
Yes.
Here's a basic script of what to say. Hi, it's Michael Polzler calling from Remax. Have you heard about Remax? Yes or no? And then, of course, exactly. And we're the fastest growing real estate organization in the world right now. How long have you been in the real estate business? Of course, asking questions. At that point, the beginning, my father knew the names were generally just every agent, and who I was talking to probably wasn't considered a high level target. But I immediately basically got the basic scripts. I wrote down what he said was how I created those scripts, and started dialing for dollars. It was on the phones. That was my job. And he did the same thing. We'd set appointments. And then once we had appointments, we could leave the office and go and visit people. And it wasn't just about telling them about Remax. A lot of questions. How long have they been in the business? How's the business going for them? Questions about how many agents do you have? What do you struggle with in the business? Because, keeping in mind, yes, we're a real estate family, and we're really fortunate that we've really been so engaged in the real estate sales business, but the core of our business is we're franchisors, and franchisors are there to provide, service and support, and we needed to know of course, where were the pain points for the people we were visiting? And sometimes they were, highest possible targets were successful independent brokers. My father and Walter had a lot of credibility because Walter was working before Remax for my father, running the Polzler real estate business, and my father, of course, being the broker and working with Walter already then. So they had a lot of real estate credibility.
Yes.
So we knew what we were talking about, and we sold the dream of banding together and being in business for yourself, but not by yourself, I think is the very franchisee cliche.
So I'm sitting here listening to this, and because of you and I spent so much time together. For the people that are listening, they might be like, "Oh my God, this guy was raised by a bunch of crazies." I mean, he's driving around in cars and going on appointments. So he's 19, and he's basically, if you don't make your cold calls and book appointments and get coffee meetings, you can't have dinner. I mean, we joke about that.
No, we always had dinner.
You always were given some food.
Yeah.
Do you think some of that is just, what we didn't mention is both, your dad and Walter, both are, like Austrian, raised, coming out of World War II, that environment, coming to Canada, right, and starting over the sort of the North American dream, if you will. Do you think some of your regimented, disciplined mindset from you, your dad, Walter, and everybody, is that a European thing? Was that a Canadian thing? Was that just a Polzler-Schneider thing?
That all of the above. That's hard to say. I would say that we didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a very immigrant story.
It is, and and I can of course tell that story. My father came to Canada from Austria. He was 12 years old when the war ended. He was apprenticed as a bread baker. He came to Canada as a bread baker, and in his early 30s ran into trouble with his lungs. He couldn't be a baker anymore. And as he was convalescing, he needed a job. He didn't have an education or very good English. So when he looked in the newspaper, it said real estate sales, no experience required. And, that was very valuable. And you realized that, once you paid the $5 for the license, I don't think there was even a test then, you basically did what every new agent should do, and that is go and sell a house to all of your friends. Because they were all renting around that age, and he sold everybody a house, and he sold their friends' houses. And of course, you realized that you had to ask for business, and you had to prospect to build your business. And the main thing, if I look at our successes, we've never complicated the business.
No.
It's a sales business where, yes, we have a great offering, a great product, whether that's the Remax brand and in our case, the sales training that comes along with it. And as far as sales training go, we've always worked with people like yourself and your father and top trainers. We've done very little of it ourselves, but we would organize it for people.
You made it available for your people.
Exactly. We made a recognized brand, so people weren't not known. You were known as Remax, even though you owned the business individually. That's like the franchising. But the core of what we did was prospect, looking for people who would benefit from the simple ideas that I just mentioned, and that is prospecting, presenting, and then, of course, the whole process of handling objections, because, often people are rejected in the first telephone call. The first call is, my father, again, cliche saying, the selling begins once the customer says no. Somebody you call today, they might not be ready to buy for 2, 3, 4 years from now. You're building a network through the prospecting process, and you're definitely not selling Remax or whatever your product is, any product. You're selling coffee. You're selling. Let's get together and have a coffee. Exactly. You're selling an appointment by by telephone. And then even when you get that first appointment, it's all about getting to know the person, figuring out what their hot buttons are. And really the thrust of the information, that first appointment is all about getting them in for a full presentation. You don't go out on the first appointment. You certainly don't give too much information by telephone. These are all, to me, very normal, very standard. Like there's sales. This is like what everybody should be doing all the time if you're in sales.
Thank you. Because what I was going to say is every young entrepreneur, every seasoned veteran, if they, they all hear like get back to the basics, and there's a lot of people that don't even understand what the basics are. Maybe the basics is like Facebook versus Instagram.
We don't know anything other than what I just described. Facebook, Instagram, newspaper advertising, flyers, faxes, billboards, emails. Whether it's Facebook, Instagram's just like it's advertising. It's an advertising medium, but. We really used a lot of those advertising mediums. First step is to target the people that you want and proactively go after them. Yes. Don't only try to drive leads and get people to call you. Yeah. We look for the people who we want. If there's some inflow of business after, or if we want more business than we're getting from looking for it, targeting, then great.
And I want everyone to listen to think about the brains of what he just said there. It is a selective approach versus a pray and spray. And look, I'm a fan of both, right? You know my operation, right? You know many people that we work with.
Both work, because there's a point where you need to.
You have to put the word out on Facebook and make the phone calls to the people that
absolutely.
you absolutely want to talk to. It's like every entrepreneur I talk to. Who is your dream 50 prospects, right? You create that list. They're not people that know you. They're people that you would die to work with and be able to support and serve. And you call them and you mail them and you text them and you email them until they get an appointment. And you show up and you introduce yourself and you find out what's important to them.
You're building relationships,
100%.
And you believe in what you're selling. But the big step one is targeting the people that you want. Yeah. After that, once you've done that to its fullest extent, then marketing and advertising. And depending on what you're selling, if you're selling houses, you're going to start advertising a lot sooner because, as you've said, to steal your lines, as I love to do, there's a lot more people that you don't know than that you do know. Yeah. Okay, but if you're selling, for example, franchises, until you've spoken to every successful real estate broker and every successful agent who might be ready to become a broker and had meaningful conversations and they've all had a presentation, then you don't need to advertise. It's about us proactively prospecting. Too many salespeople act like people do in the car dealership business, for example, or in a retail store waiting for people to come in. It's not really truly a sales process. Yes, they're selling you something, but when I think of it,
easier when they walk in and say, "Hi, I like the blue one."
Yes, yeah, and there's lots of great car salespeople, but how many times have you gone in and looked at a car, given them your name, and then never heard from them again? How many car salespeople keep in touch with you? Like these prospects we talk about, there are people, like there are many stories of people we spoke to for 5 and 7 years before they bought.
Yep. Every good entrepreneur, every good salesperson knows exactly what he's talking about. Okay, let's fast forward. So I want to get into franchise. I want to get into family business. But let's go from, and I want to talk Europe. So you Walter and your father go out. They start this thing. You get involved. Pamela gets involved. It becomes this monster. And what most people don't know today is, you guys control, if you looked at the math, it's around a third of the globe now as the master franchise.
About a third of Remax about a third of Remax. In Europe, we sold about 370 franchises last year, about 320 the year before that. We're at about 24,000 sales associates right now. We're in virtually every country in Europe, and some countries that actually aren't part of Europe that we've kind of annexed, like is Israel, and I guess part of Turkey's Europe. The other part is considered Asia. So theoretically, we actually have I think you were with me. We have offices in Asia on the other side of the Bosphorus. In Istanbul. So basically in the European operation, from Iceland to the Iranian border, from the Arctic Circle to the bottom of Israel, so I guess that's the Egyptian border. And and in North America, the province of Ontario, Toronto, Greater Toronto area, all of the New England states, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Atlantic provinces of Canada. So all in, we're somewhere around 40,000 sales associates right now.
Everyone just to think about that number. Two guys get together, immigrants that get into real estate because it's a no experience required. And here we are, fast forward 50 years later. It's about right. 55 years later with your dad.
From real estate, from starting real estate. Yeah.
He's now 87.
Yeah, I started in real estate over 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, so 50 years later, for all of you that are listening that are in your 20s, 50 years later, 40,000 agents.
Yes.
I mean, that's a Ray Kroc-esque McDonald's type story. So let's move away from that for a second. I want to talk specifically
about prospecting.
No, we're going to talk prospecting. But I want you to describe for a minute. 7 years ago, you took the helm and you became CEO for Europe. And at that time, you were 10,000 agents, 12,000 agents?
Yeah.
7 years ago?
Yeah, I think it was around 10, 11,000.
Describe to all my friends that are listening in North America how much fun it was 7 years ago, and perhaps even today, to buy or sell an apartment or a house in Europe, anywhere. Describe what the experience was like.
The real estate sales experience is very poor customer service. No MLS system, so there's no multiple listing services anywhere. You basically agents don't cooperate with each other. The vast majority of agents do not sell each other's listings. Many listings are taken as open listings, so it's not uncommon to have 5 different agents with the same listing advertising it on the same portal at 5 different prices, and that's not uncommon. That happens a lot because agents don't cooperate. You need to expose your property that way. Generally, the agents are not knowledgeable. We've taught the Remax agents to be. I want to be clear about that right from the beginning. But the average real estate agent does not understand financing. How much does it cost to borrow 100,000 euros? Mm-hmm. Well, it costs about 400 euros a month in most countries on average. So be able to scale it up from there. Any real estate agent should be able to explain how much does it cost to borrow $100,000 at today's interest rates. If you don't know that instantly and what the payment on that is,
and how does that compare to rent?
And how does that compare to rent? And how much are you paying for rent? And this is what you can afford. And have you saved any money for a down payment? And if not, do your parents own their own house? And all of those things. But I think we're digressing a little bit.
It's great because a lot of people. You said a couple of days ago we were in an executive meeting and you were sharing with my team. You said, look, the post-World War II Europe was very different from the baby boomer generation of the U.S. and Canada, right? And
yes,
back then there was the European way and the U.S. way. All of that has changed, except for real estate.
Yes, well, we're changing it. We're changing it in real estate.
So tell us. I want to know, what are 3 to 4 things you guys have done in the last 7 years to make it better for the consumer to buy and sell real estate?
Okay, well, let me stick with the baby boomers versus the millennials for a second, because you jumped over that. I think it's very important, okay? European baby boomers were very different than North American baby boomers. At that time, you didn't have the freedom to move around Europe. Half of Europe was behind the Iron Curtain, and if you lived in a small country like Austria, it was not so easy to move to England or to France. As were once the Euro bloc came together, then the wall came down in the EU. You could move around. Baby boomers were very different in North America than they were in Europe. If you look at the difference between, say, the millennials, which are in the, well into the home buying and selling cycle right now, there is not very much difference between a Euro millennial and a North American millennial. It's like fashion. People used to say Euro fashion, Europe cars. It's different. That's very European. Yeah, some of that's still there, but if we go to the mall here in California, we're going to find the same stuff that you find in the big shopping areas in Europe, and the products are going to be generally very similar. So, to your point, that the millennials are just as impatient as North American millennials, and they're not happy with the customer experience in real estate sales. They want information. They want, we did a study of 2,000 consumers that have either bought or sold real estate. It takes up to 3 years to buy a property. You have to often talk to 30 different agents because there's no buyer representation. And then when you finally find a property, of course you're happy and say you're happy with the company because they finally had a house for you. Where we are changing that is we believe in buyer representation. We believe in cooperation. It's slow, but our agents are doing it.
I want you to literally imagine, you once said to me a couple of years ago, you said, Tom, you and Kathy show up to Vienna, you've identified an area where you want to live, you can't fly in and say, I'd like to see 7 houses.
No, you cannot see, if you're very lucky, you can see 2 houses in one day. It's difficult to see 3 homes in a week. It takes from the average time to call back is 48 hours. We're in a place now where people Google something. When you Google what's the population of China, Google doesn't send you an email 2 days later. That's how long it takes for agents to call you back. People want that information right away. Yeah. Same thing with showings. It's impossible to do that in the European marketplace, which isn't good for sellers, nor is it good for buyers. No. So we see a significant opportunity in working it backwards from the customer. How do we make a better experience for the customer? How do we make a better buying experience? How do we expose sellers' homes to more potential buyers? And the reason cooperation doesn't work is not so much that agents don't want to do it. There's an element of that, but there's no rules in place. If you look at the MLS, multiple listing service in North America, there's very clear rules of engagement on commissions and showings and when you have to be able to make the property available by all of these things. These rules don't exist in the European marketplace anywhere.
And I want to get, for the people that are listening, no licensing, right? But a couple of countries.
There is some licensing. Yeah, there's a little bit. Yes, very little licensing.
But very little governance, very little rules and regulations, which on one side could be wildly exciting, but on the flip side, the person that's losing for the most part is the consumer.
Yes.
Right, the one that wants to buy, the one that wants to sell.
No historical data when you want to sell your property to know if the price is right. No historical data for when you're buying to know if the price is right.
So no Zillow coming to you.
There is no Zillow. There's no data. There's no data anywhere that I have found.
How hard was it to come from Canada, Toronto specifically, which, Toronto could just as easily be San Francisco, could easily be Miami, New York, meaning the way that, the Canadian and the U.S. real estate rules, it's so similar in terms of how they operate.
Yes.
How hard was it then to go to Europe and hear that there's no buyer representation, there's no MLS, there's no cooperation, there's no sharing of listing inventory? How hard was that?
It was incredibly easy. I loved the challenge, and because I say things like, you should call people back within a day, and you should be able to see more than one property in a day, and talk about things like the MLS and how North American real estate is done, people go, oh, wow, really? And like time on the market, and you start explaining these things, and you realize that, well, first you get over the fact that it makes me feel really smart, and nobody knows that I'm just basically telling them what everybody in North America knows.
Yes. Including most consumers.
including all consumers, exactly. But that you're helping people. You're helping agents. Agents are excited to learn about these things, and that's why Remax has grown really fast. This is such a cornerstone of what we believe in, and we're creating a better customer experience. I mean, understanding that, as I said, the millennials want fast, service, good knowledge. They don't want to do business the way their parents did, or the way it's always been done. No different than how consumers buy things online here now. People don't shop the way they did 10 years ago.
Yeah. I'm going to hit you with a bunch of questions really fast. So, question number one, your prediction 10 years from now, how is real estate done in Europe?
Europe is 600 million people.
Yeah, 716 million.
If you include Russia, yes, and you go all the way up to half of Russia, not including Russia, it's about 600 million. Anyways, it's a lot. It's big. It's more than double the United States. Okay. I believe that my vision is that enough people will have changed and adopted to our way of doing business, which will not end up exactly like the North American model. That's not what we encourage, but we just, by creating a better customer experience, the ones who adopt will be in business and flourish. I believe a lot of those people are not even in the business yet, because I've tried to speak to a lot of our competitors about these ideas, like cooperating with each other, and you don't get a great response. I believe those who adopt will flourish, and those who do not adopt to better customer experience are going to be out of the business. I think the customer experience is going to be much better in most parts of Europe in 10 years from now. But the scale of the project is like swimming across the Atlantic. It is. It's mammoth. I try not to think about it. I feel like, like probably how Columbus and the guys on the boats felt when they were just pulling out of Spain, and they could look back and they still see Spain. Just keep going west. No matter what happens, keep going west. We'll hit land eventually.
You said something to me yesterday. We were just hanging out and masterminding and brainstorming, having fun. You said something yesterday that I wrote down immediately as one of the best metaphors I've heard in a long time. You said, imagine 120 years ago, all these guys in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Finish that.
Well, how I feel doing my job is like 120 years ago, standing in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia, surrounded by the local people, trying to explain to them what's in the ground.
There's
that black stuff in the ground, exactly, and we're going to pump it out of the ground, and we're going to sell it to the whole world, and you're all going to be fabulously wealthy, and not just sitting here eating dates, hoping to find some water. Yeah. And how that sales process would have worked. And 120 years ago, they didn't understand all that oil that was under the ground in a place like Saudi Arabia, let alone being the first people who were there trying to explain to get that oil out. That's how I feel about real estate in Europe right now. I know that oil is down there, and we've shown that we're starting to get it out. We have very good stories of cooperation. We have very good stories of agents working together to create a better customer experience, and therefore we've had the level of success we have. That's why we have 24,000 and growing rapidly. 15 to 20% growth in sales volume every year. That's compounded. So that's that not many companies grow that fast, and it's because consumers choose to use us because we train our agents differently. And here's for me what's really important to add to this, Tom, is I will share this with any of our competitors. I will share this story with anybody who wants to listen. Of course, I'd love them to join RE/MAX, but more than anything, I'd like them to join me in creating a great customer experience. And I'm begging somebody to copy us and work with us. And so far, we haven't had a lot of luck with our competitors, but we found a lot of like-minded people who want to join RE/MAX, so that's great.
Okay, a couple other quick, easy questions. Best advice for someone working in a partnership and or family business, because you have both. How do you make that work? Partnership, Mr. P and Walter, and then family, you, Pamela, now Christopher, and multi-generational. How do you make it work? Because we all know how to make it not work. How do you make it work?
I don't know. I don't know if we're just lucky. That we've always gotten along and everybody's been really fair and equitable with each other. I think that's the case. My sister and I are a fair bit older than Walter's family. My father is, 20 years older than Walter is. And my nieces and nephews work in the business. They've done everything from mortgages. Three of my nieces sell real estate. Walter's has two of his three children now in their 20s in the business. My son Max is 19 years old now. He was just at our regional owners meeting in Switzerland. He's been to many RE/MAX events. I don't know if he'll choose to work in the business. I think biggest thing is we've all worked, and we've always worked.
Nobody was on Easy Street.
Nobody was on Easy Street. Everybody worked, and it was all about scaling and working together towards a common goal. And we all had different strengths. And, I'm a real sales guy, promoter. My sister is a great salesperson, but has much stronger organizational skills than I do. We all share a common vision. You talk about what we've built. We think it's normal, and we just want to keep scaling. I just said in a presentation, I see 25,000 agents in Europe. That's a speed bump. That's just going to be like boom, boom, bang, and we're just going to keep going. The mindset is, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 100,000. Like, just keep selling a great product, and as long as that product supports great service for consumers, people are going to want to keep buying it. No different than the great service and the environment we've created for great real estate agents and the best real estate agents in North America, which is, that's that. So in a family business, I guess everybody working in it has made the biggest difference. We've all been really engaged with a common goal.
And I think there's also, there is, now, because now you've got, second generation, third generation, no longer really immigrants. Now they're Canadian or they're, like.
Well, I've moved back to Europe where my father came from, and Max, my 19-year-old son, is in his second semester at university in Vienna. So we're going
You're going the opposite. You're not
the opposite, exactly. So I see the world as a fairly small place. I travel a lot. I'm about 300 days a year in hotels. A couple of days ago I was in Toronto for a few days, but less than a week ago I was in Vienna, Austria. A few days before that I was in Schwyz, Switzerland. Before that, a few days before that, I was in Portugal, and before that, I was in Prague. And we work it pretty hard. But this is what we know. This is what we do. It's what we love. I wouldn't do it if I wasn't really passionate. And I'm really lucky I can be working with so many great people. I love it.
Yeah, that really is a good answer, because there's a lot of nuggets inside family business making it work. So one last question, and it's probably a big one. Someone out there listening right now is thinking, man, I got this idea and I want to franchise it. I got this business that I started. A friend of mine, Steve Schultz, he and his wife started a company called Nectar Juice, right? And, from these little, 1-day cleanse, 3-day cleanse, 7-day cleanse, he was never in franchising before. He was an infomercial guy, right? And I don't think he's ever pressed a juice in his life that I'm aware of. And yet he's got, I don't even know how many stores now, and they built this machine. If you were to give somebody some early advice, some do's and don'ts on starting a franchise, what would you recommend?
Consistent, replicatable customer experience that you can sell to individual entrepreneurs as a opportunity that they can build their own business. And of course, you have to have a product that the public is going to want to buy. To me, I think that goes without saying. And making it easier for somebody who wants to own their own business, because everything from scale and buying in something like a juice business. In our business, the biggest thing is idea sharing. What we learn from each other, just like the way we network with each other, and what you can learn in my business from other Remax brokers. I'm sure your friend's juice business, if he chooses to franchise it, somebody in one of their stores is going to invent something a little bit different, just like you saw happen in companies like McDonald's. One guy decided he's going to start serving breakfast, and now you got breakfast at McDonald's. The Mick Cafe comes from Vienna, Austria, believe it or not. Yeah, that's where the first Mick Cafe was. Now they're everywhere, and you have to have something that it has to be a win-win if you're going to be a franchisor. The franchisee has to be able to make appropriate living, and obviously you do as the master franchisor, and you have to have a great product and be open-minded to change, because in all businesses, like everything I just said, is the business we started in 1980 is not the business that we're in today. Change.
And
prospect. Yeah, it's all about scaling. Everything. Any business, no matter what you're selling, it's a scaling business. If you're selling homes and you sold 10 homes last year, and you want to earn a bit more money, you need to have a plan to get to selling 20, 25. You've shown, Tom, through your business that it's possible to sell 100, it's possible to sell 200, exactly. That it is possible, and there's systems in place. Back to franchising. Systems that work, replicatable systems. And what you can't do, outsource. I look at our relationship. We can't create training programs that are as good as what you teach people. Why don't I lead people to you in our business? That's what we do. That's how we originally got to know each other.
McDonald's U was formed after Disney U, because they were sending all their people to Disney U and said, okay, now we understand it, we can go do it. But for years, that was the training. So Michael, we covered a lot of ground, and I want to be mindful of our time. I want to say to you first and foremost, thank you. We've become really good friends.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun. Absolutely.
We have a lot of fun. We also, because of our backgrounds, we think very similarly. We were kind of raised with this gritty, go build it, go make it happen. Yeah. And I just want to say publicly in front of all the listeners, I am just super proud of you, man. You, your sister, Christopher, the entire family, Walter, who I, admire and just super enjoy. I'm just proud of you guys.
Yeah. Thanks. Great to be here. And we thank you and all of you guys for all the support and, of course, all of our great RE/MAX people out there. And happy to share with RE/MAX and non-RE/MAX alike. I love to share, love to tell the success stories. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me, Tom.
All right, buddy. Thank you, man. All right, guys. So we got a lot of value today, and I can't wait to read the comments. And for those young entrepreneurs out there, there's a lot of nuggets here. And for my long-time veterans that have been doing this business for a long time, man, I'm really thinking about what's it going to look like in 20 more years, because I'm already 30 years in. This is inspiring.
I have nothing else to do.
Exactly. We're out. See you guys soon.
So as always, I love interviewing these extraordinary, cast of characters, and Michael certainly fits that bill. Talk about a guy that's intense and focused and trying to change how real estate is done to ultimately serve the consumer. Think about what you learned inside this interview. What were the takeaways? What were the ahas? Maybe you're thinking about moving to a different country and starting over, knowing what you know now. So I can't wait to read your comments. Let me know what you're thinking, and thanks always for checking out the podcast. If you want more information about this episode, including my show notes, mentions, links, and everything else, make sure you visit tomferry.com/podcast. That's tomferry.com/podcast. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.